Hello, everybody. Good to have you back with us and on your screens. And fantastic to have you back again, Graham, as Dr. G today in our fabulous session we are going to take for the next hour in the digital arena, where we have the skeptics and the marketeers standing poles apart. The skeptics sees personalization as the thinly veiled excuse for digital espionage. The 007 in me is excited. An eerie shadow that follows every click, transforming the intent into a marketplace that knows your name and your cats. This reminds me of E.T. nach Hause telefonieren and all the long distance calls which got initiated and made my bill extremely expensive. Meanwhile, the marketeer, armed with charts and graphs, champions personalization as the pinnacle of customer care, a magic wand that transforms ads into helpful suggestions, promising an utopia where every message is a welcome whisper rather than a shout in the dark. While the skeptic mourns the loss of anonymity, the marketer dreams of a world where data turns into delight, convinced that the right algorithm can turn skepticism into satisfaction. Yet, in this dance of data and doubt, the question remains, can personalization bridge the gap between intrusion and genuine insight? Now, Dr. G, it's up to you. Please help us to learn a bit more about you and background, and then we take it off.
Okay, thanks for the intro, Ralph. Good to see you again, Thomas and Marshall. So,
good to see you again.
As always.
The 30-second intro. I've been a consultant for 35 years, worked with 35 or more large corporations around the world, doing a whole variety of things. Started out at British Airways, moved through operations research, then BPR in the early days, moved into customer service, into billing systems, into marketing, and more recently been involved in decisioning. And of course, today, everybody's involved in some way, shape or form in looking at how we use AI to drive or supercharge, as my post today, supercharge how we do our business. A journey of discovery.
So it's a compressor, not a turbo. But
clever.
The basic question is, what the heck is personalization or hyper-personalization? And do we need it?
Yeah, is there even
Who needs it? Who needs it?
It's a good question. So there are a variety of different interpretations. So for me, hyper-personalization is just an extreme form of personalization, and personalization by itself is, if you go back to Peppers and Rogers, the early work on CRM, he described CRM with a very simple and I think the most attractive definition I've ever heard for any of these managerial things, which is treating different customers differently. That ultimately is what personalization should be. Treating different customers differently, depending on their circumstances.
Yeah.
Hyper-personalization is a variation on a theme. It's just more and more of that. So more data, more understanding, more ability to personalize, maybe even individualize communications or interactions with customers. But it's the downside. And that downside is, I think it's been hijacked by people whose interest is in content. So the idea that Marshall requires, let's assume Marshall's interested in baseball, and Thomas is which I know is the case. So when we personalize your communications, Marshall will see a picture of somebody with a baseball bat in the hand, and Thomas will see the picture of somebody on aboard a large racing yacht, because that's where your interests are. So we get hyper-personalized content. You know my opinion on that. I don't think it's actually what customers want. I think they want something else, which is help getting their stuff done, their jobs done. But that's that's part of the evolution of a relatively new concept.
You just did say two interesting things. One is treat different people differently.
Yep.
Another thing is individualize. Yeah. So whom does it serve? And isn't it that I get treated or people get treated differently wrong, and by not considering their desires and wishes and needs?
So
whom does it serve? Does it serve Marshall, or does seeing a baseball bat serve Marshall, or does that potentially only serve the marketer?
So it's a good question. So obviously, I think in the past, driven by vendors to a certain extent, personalization has been about marketers and products. It's been about personalizing content. It's been about doing things that are good for marketing. And I have no problem with marketing. Marketing is done well. Marketing provides a wonderful service. It introduces new people to new things that they might need, helps to explain where they can be used. And when you are in the moment of that category entry point, when you're looking for a new product or service, it makes recommendations that are relevant to you. But obviously, as we recognize that for a lot of marketers, particularly traditional marketers, then they're still living in a world of products. So rather than what is your job to be done as a customer?
Yeah.
Where are you on your journey? How can we help you to get to the end of your journey where you get the outcomes you desire fast, easier, and better? They're more focused on, I have a product to sell. I'm a product manager. My bonuses depending on selling products. Give me 100,000 customers. I know 1,000 will buy, a 1% response rate. And my costs are very, very low, the email marketing or digital marketing. So I make profit, even though most customers ignore me completely. So, but what I think is happening, as I said before, good marketing is a service. It helps customers to make choices and decisions that otherwise they would struggle to make. Why marketing often should precede social media in many ways. That I need to understand what the hell your product is and what it can do for me before I can start talking to other people about it, having used it to do something useful. Personalization is just a way to achieve those aims.
So
I want to see benefit talk. Sorry, Thomas. And I was most disturbed that being, as I wrote, the one-to-one oldie and a big fan of Martha Rogers and Don Peppers in the old days, and when they started to do some creation for companies which were utilizing their ideas in the early old days, you have been asked politely, what is your area of interest? Whereas these days, I get the impression they use an artificial intelligence tool which has a decision-making process, taking it out of my hand, and I get at high speed a bombardment of bullshit. Yeah,
it is a good point. I mean, I think that applies more to older school direct marketing than it does to what we're doing today using personalization. But there's an element of truth there. So there's an EMAR-SIS SAP company study done a couple of years ago that I think applies today still. And that is that what it found was that although marketers thought that many customers want to hear from every day, 20% of customers never want to hear from marketers at all, ever. Not interested at all. Another 20% want to hear once every couple of times a month, once a month rather. Another 10%, 2 or 3 times a month. So 50% of customers don't really want to hear from marketers all that much at all. So what that means is that marketers need to be very careful. And marketers, ideally when they're in the marketplace, which means they need to identify customer intent. In the old days of direct marketing, we had the 40, 30, 20, 10 rule. 40% of success was identifying the right customer. 30% was identifying the right timing. 20% was identifying the right content. Proposition. And 10%, the last 10% was identifying the right content. So knowing when the customer is in the marketplace, customer and timing, that's 70% of success in marketing.
That directly ties into John's question. Hi, John. Good to have you here. So this basically you are saying they're all doing it wrong, or they're all getting it wrong?
No, I don't think so.
So,
I think it's an
well-
evolutionary process.
Well, still, they are doing it wrong, because I do get too much and I do get the wrong stuff. So is there any indication of what that does cost the marketers or the businesses behind?
I think it's a good question. So wrong is perhaps not the best word. So we're in a marketplace. I have people who may want to buy things, and I have people who do want to sell things. So marketing's job is to build a bridge between the two. I'll offer you what I have, ideally at a point when you're actually in the marketplace to buy. And if you think what I have to offer is relevant, then you'll buy it. Traditionally, through direct marketing, marketers would have spent a lot of time marketing people who were not in the marketplace. There was work by, for example, John Dawes in B2B initially at the Ehrenberg Bass Institute of Marketing Research Science in Australia that suggests that B2B customers are not in the marketplace 95% of the time. If you look at B2C response rates, that's probably 99 to 99.9% of the time. If you're not in the marketplace, there's no point marketing to you, not in terms of sales activation marketing, because you're not going to buy. A lot of marketing driven by time scales, advanced plans, periodicity, whatever. January is when we're going to be pushing credit card sales. February is going to be pushing mortgages and financial services. Most of the customers they reach out to are not giving the market. It's not going to work. So identifying intent drives 70% of success. The rest is to do with your proposition and your content.
So why aren't they doing it? So because, I mean, all of us are getting a gazillion of marketing letters every day. Far too many. So, well, unluckily, Google is not good enough to put them all into the spam folder.
Yeah.
So this ties directly into what you just said. The response rate is abysmal. It also ties into what you said before, that most of us do not want to hear that often from any given vendor.
Yes, I think that's true.
So why, at the same time, their marketers are doing that because AI and, well, powerful tools in general make it incredibly easy to blast out another 100,000 mails. And if the response rate doesn't plummet or slows down slower than the increase in mails, it's still good for them. But you're saying there is a better way. How should they do it better?
So it's a good point. So a lot of direct marketing in the past survived and prospered because of the law of large numbers. If I reach a very large number of people at a very small cost, I will hit my targets of sales per quarter and get my bonuses as a consequence, in a very simplistic term. But most customers are not in the marketplace. And in the worst case, what we know is that what can happen is that customers go what's called banner blind, particularly digitally. So I see stuff that's irrelevant on the app or in the web. I ignore it, and I learn to ignore the places where those things come about. But also, unfortunately, I also learn to ignore all the other estate around those things, including things that might have invaluable service messages. In the worst case, I can exercise my GDPR rights and opt out of marketing completely. Then you can't market to me at all. You can send me service messages. You can't market to me at all, because I've withdrawn consent in an extreme position. You see when Apple introduced its cookieless environment a few months ago, or a few years ago now, that a large proportion of people did not consent to marketing for obvious reasons. So back to my earlier point, if you can identify what customers are trying to do, what are their jobs to be done? If you can identify where they are in their journey, then if you're a smart marketer, you can use that as a guide to identify what's the right content to help the customer at that point in time in their journey to get to the next stage faster, easier, and better without doing anything at all. And that provides the service. It provides resources that are valuable to the other party. The markets provide a service to customers. But that has to be the nirvana. But that comes with implications. So if I look at a typical customer who's been with the bank for 20 years, They've probably got 2, 3 products with that bank. They have products with many other banks as well, typically. So they're not in the market very often, probably once every few years. There's no point sending them sales activation messages when you're not in the market. It won't work. We just know it won't work. So what I need to start thinking about is, rather than doing outbound communication of the sales activation type all the time, I need to start engaging with the customer. I need to identify, where are you in your journey? What are you trying to do? How can I nudge you to help you get to the next point of the fight that isn't better? How can I wrap data, so data insights and tools, into my interactions with you to help you to make progress towards your goal, towards your desired outcomes? That's where marketing needs to go, and marketing is going there already through personalization driven by data, and AI, Gen AI, and other machine learning tools are supportive of that in the right hands. But of course, like all tools, they can be used by the wrong hands as well, and that's going to happen a certain percentage of the time.
Right. So personalization appears to be more about nurturing than a sales blitz. How does that vary between B2B and B2C concerns?
So it's a good point. So it should be more about nurturing a customer to the point where they enter the marketplace. So we have research by people like Byron Sharp and Jenny Romaniuk, again at Ehrenberg Bass, described in their groundbreaking books, How Brands Grow 1 and 2, shows that most customers only enter the marketplace at category entry points. And if you have a high mental availability, so we've nurtured a relationship, we have provided a good customer experience, we provided a bit of service when you need it, for customer service, traditional old-fashioned customer service, then the likelihood that your brand is going to be as part of that highly mentally available situation, where you're maybe the only brand in the consideration set, is much higher as a consequence. You're more likely to be the brand that gets sold at that category entry point. You have to fulfill that promise, of course, once you get to that point, but that's a different matter entirely. So marketing needs to, we have inbound marketing, which is obviously very effective because you're talking to me about what you want to help with, sales through service. We have outbound marketing, which we talked about a minute ago. This engagement marketing element is very powerful. It's not new. We've had always on marketing for a long time. But that engagement marketing part is what I see as a very big, large growth area. And Gen AI and other AI tools will help you do that more efficient, more effectively.
There's quite a good discussion going on here on the side, on the sidebar. So
We'd love to see it.
Yeah,
I applaud it.
Yeah, which is great. Really great. This is exactly what we want to achieve.
Yeah, so, I can't see it, of course, except for Boyer's comment at the bottom.
Yeah, and this comment is, I think it's spot on. Because what happens, this is basically a rephrasing of what I said earlier. So what they do is serve their own purposes instead of mine. This is, in my opinion, so I'd like to specify my statement a little more. I think this seems to be particularly true in B2C businesses. B2B marketers seem to get that slightly better by not pummeling me all the time, especially if the deal size gets bigger. So it's probably part of that. So they try to get to me only when there are clearer signals or when it matters more. Why is that? Why am I objectized as a person, as a consumer, and not so much in a business environment?
If you think about it, the nature of B2B and B2C sales, although there are many similarities, quite different. So B2B is over a long period of time. It's a larger lot size. You describe as often a committee of buyers rather than individuals. And you have key account management rather than CRM as the foundation thing. And obviously these days you have this thing called customer success, which is helping you get the value of what you've already bought, in the background as well, which you don't have in the same way in B2C. So I go back to my fundamental point, which is marketing is about how you communicate through markets. So I have stuff to offer, but I don't know who wants to buy it necessarily. You have things you may or may not want to buy, but you don't know what's on offer either. The marketing fulfills that gap bridging activity of showing to others what you have available. Nobody is forced to buy. And I would argue that marketing, even spam marketing, does not do harm from a legal perspective.
I don't say legally sphere, but let me turn your words in your mouth now. Just yanking your chain. What you are saying is that marketing equates advertising.
No,
Because this is what it is.
Not at all.
Sending out more spam is an ad.
No, not necessarily. So I think we need to think about two different sorts of things. If you look at the work of, for example, Binnett and Field on the 30-year study of marketing effectiveness award winners over the years, they identified the differences between brand building communications, often emotional, take place over a long period of time, and sales activation communications, which are often more logical to help you inform you about how to make your sales choices and your decisions over a shorter period of time. They work synergistically together. So you need them both, and they always the apocryphal the figures they use often is a 60-40 split, 60% brand building, 40% sales activation. So I differentiate when I talk about marketing, I'm talking about sales activation stuff typically. Although engagement marketing is a variation on the theme, it's things that build up to sales activation. Advertising, for me, I'm talking about is to do with brand building. So it's to building recognition and recall of whatever your brand may be in the marketplace, building markets rather than fulfilling the needs of individuals within that marketplace. So the comment I saw a second ago about von Boyer, apologies if that's the wrong pronunciation, about customers having no agency to decide what personalization looks like, is true. That's not the function of a marketplace. So if I, over time, learn more about you and you talk to me, so the ultimate is obviously I call you through the call center or interact with you directly, but I'm driving inbound communications because I've got a problem, and I'll tell you about my problem, and then you can create a solution for me about what to tell you. So I have all that contextual insight that marketers generally don't have. Why? Because we don't give it to them. Historically, we won't give it to them because they will abuse it, and their advantage to our advantage, which is, that's part of history. That's part of why today we have personalized marketing, which is much more effective than traditional direct marketing. Although direct marketing can be really effective. When I ran CRM for Toyota Financial Services in one of its opcos, I had on one of my campaigns, I had a 35% response rate. 35% bought a car and financed it through Toyota. Why? Because it was a very, very specific communication, right customer, right time, individual value proposition. Nobody got the same value proposition. The content was almost irrelevant. So you can make this work really effectively, but most marketers don't have the luxury of having this information. And the law of large numbers, which we talked about a second ago. Lots of contacts, very cheap. I hit my numbers, get my bonus, I'm successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's wasteful. It's wasteful on a small scale, but that's the nature of markets. And we shouldn't ever get away from the idea we're in a marketplace where people can present their wares, or where I can say whether I like them or not. Nobody's forcing me to buy anything.
I tend to disagree here. If I'm not interested in buying stuff, then I'm not in the marketplace. And then I expect to not be bloody, get shoved stuff into my face. So why are vendors still using technology, AI, that badly? Because they need to know that I don't want to.
But let's not confuse things. So most
I'm confusing things here.
There's a recent study I looked at a little while ago. Yeah. It showed that something like 70% of marketers, I think, are already using Gen AI. More than 19% planning to use it. The marketers find that some 95% find it was actually very helpful in a variety of ways, driving personalization, driving segmentation, driving content generation. Are highly successful use cases for them. But again, it's being in the marketplace is different to having a market. So lots of vendors selling stuff, lots of customers, maybe in the marketplace, maybe not in the market, but actually in a market. And the vendors use that opportunity to market to people who've shown interest of some kind. If I don't have your details, I can't market to you. That means you must have given me, or I must have arranged to get your contact details somehow. And ultimately, all those things are, well, not ultimately all, but many of them are provided on the quid pro quo that I'll get something of interest in return.
Which I don't, because I don't want it, so it's not of interest. Hence,
No,
I delete it, and
But you have the option.
As a marketer, I don't know what you're interested in until you tell me.
The market is a concept.
I can't market to you. So I'm going to tell you what I have.
Yeah.
If I think you could be vaguely interested, and I think that's entirely legitimate. And you can decide not to take it. And you can decide that you hate me so much for marketing to you, not to use me at all. That's your choice.
Could go even better. So in earlier times, what they did is they did a robocall. Well, not so robo, because it wasn't robo yet. They had their call center and gave me a call that I didn't want. The consequence was that this got forbidden. But there's a penalty on it. So why shouldn't that same behavior, and sending an unwanted email is the same behavior, should not be forbidden the same way?
I think
so. To me, it's an abuse of AI.
I understand. So most marketers aren't using AI to do that in the way you're describing. You don't need AI to do those things. AI, we should be using it to do specific things where we can do it better than the tools we already have available to do whatever that personalization. We do it better with AI than without. So, but I think the difference between the two is the degree of interruption and degree of harm that might be caused, harm in a like term. If I'm going to interrupt you at 7 o'clock in the evening while you're having your evening meal with your family, that's a little bit different to sending you a piece of spam email. I don't know it's spam, only you know it's spam when you get it, and then deciding not to do anything about it. Clicking those things away or using tools to do that on your behalf is effortless. It's part of that war of attrition that you have between marketers and vendors. So while I have cookies disappearing I've already gone from Apple, going from Google at some point in the near future, and so forth. Part of that continuous battle between I want to contact you and I don't want to contact you. And those things do actually work. If you look at the work, for example, of Kuhn Powers and marketing mix modeling, we looked at company-driven communication, so sales-driven contact, for example. But they had a relatively low elasticity. I think it was 0.003. So I increased my budget by 100%. I increased a 0.3% increase in sales from those activities. Retargeting and things where customer drives activity, not actually present at the time, was 10 times more effective. But communication to customers when they are in the market doing something in the middle of their jobs was 44 times more effective than communicating at customers because you can. So we're learning these things. The new measurement tools like marketing mix modeling, for example, provide us with insights that we didn't have through attribution modeling in the past. So it's we're learning, getting it. No marketer wants to market you if you're not going to buy. It's a waste of time. And it's a danger that you're going to go banner blind and turn marketing off completely. But they don't necessarily know what you're looking for when you're in the marketplace. So they will try things out. And as they gather more information and more insights about you to identify, yes, you're in the marketplace, and we have a matching value proposition, and we have some decent content, then they will market to you and it'll be more effective. That's my Toyota case, 35% response rate.
So this is pretty much the answer to Tony's question, right?
I haven't read it yet. I'll read it now. Oh, that's a difficult one as well. So it's a very good. Tony and I know each other well, and we've had conversations about this in the past. CLV today is a largely arithmetic construct. So we look at likelihood of large events, rare large events, buying something happening. Back to that financial service. I mean, think back to yourself. How many years you've been with your main bank? and how many products you have with them, 1, 2, 3, 4, and how infrequently you're in the marketplace. So our models to the CLV today are driven by rare events, buying something, and large amounts of money in exchange when you do. Arithmetic models. I believe we need to move to a different model, and more of a geometric model, whereby looking at I interact with you, an engagement communication that has a small incremental impact on your likelihood to buy or to recommend or to give me information that will help me to make better choices and decisions about you. So I'm adding all these little things time and time again over time, geometrically, rather than just having a rare event, arithmetic addition when I buy something. So I think we should be looking to manage lifetime value, but we're recognizing that we have many, many ways to influence lifetime value through our communications, through our experiences, through our brand communications, through other things as well. So looking at the end number, the CLV number, you're worth X, Y, Z, is probably not as useful as looking at what do I do next? What I do next will influence what I do after that. And that will ultimately influence whether I buy, whether I go elsewhere, or whether I do something different. So CLV models, yes, but not the arithmetic models. We need to think differently a little bit.
So let's assume for a moment that I'm right in saying that marketers get it wrong. So as Natalie says, technology is not bad, it's just a tool. It can be used for good and for bad purpose, or the right or the wrong purposes.
Yes.
So let's assume by using Gen AI and targeting machine learning based targeting to do personalization wrong. So what would be, and you already started to go into that, what would be better and positive ways to do these technologies, to do it the right way based upon jobs to be done, based upon outcomes for me as the target, in quotes, and as opposed to outcome for Ralph being the marketer and his bonus. Sorry, using you as an example.
The more
I will
put your evil, your dark, your black hat from the six sorts of hats thinking, the Bono. The more you can have customers get their jobs done, the more likely you are to be successful. I think is a very simple way to describe that. That means I always think personalization as what I describe as the 3 R's that you need to be good at personalization. There's an element about respect. So do you remember me? Do you recognize me? Do you reward me for your behavior, for my behavior? So CLV is a future measure of value. How much are you worth to me as a company, as a customer? How much are you worth to me in the future, starting now? But for customers, value goes in the opposite direction. How much have I bought from you? How long have I been loyal to you as a customer in the past? So that respect element is one thing that should drive effective personalization. The next is what I call reinforcement. So helping you get more value out of what you've already bought from us. That's the engagement marketing element that personalization can do really, really well. When combined with journey and analytics and journey orchestration. So I can orchestrate your journey from where you are to where you want to get to. And then the last thing is the recommendation thing. So making appropriate suggestions about better stuff to help you get your jobs done when you're in the marketplace. So I think AI, machine learning AI, Gen AI is a new way of looking at how we identify what people are trying to do. Provides a powerful toolkit to help marketers to better identify who are you, what are you trying to do, how do you measure success, and how can I help you get there faster, easier, and better than what I do today. You won't get it right initially. It's a lot of it's an experimental thing. But as I said before, if you're not in the marketplace, you're not in the marketplace to buy something, no matter what I do, it's not going to persuade you to do something. At best, I'll buy early or I'll switch something from somewhere else, but I won't get a huge incremental increase. Say, for example, by discounting. There's another little video, what would you buy? Les Bennett the other day on YouTube showing you when you discount and offer promotions of various kinds, the uplift you get isn't all about new customers buying new things. It's often cannibalizing sales from other times and other places. So you don't end up earning a great deal, but of course you pay a lot as a consequence. So I think marketers are starting to use personalization, well, obviously big use of personalization, but starting to use AI in various forms to identify when you are in the marketplace and what you're looking to get and how I can help you, and to create content, and then to manage those interactions with you. I mean, I put up a post this afternoon about 5 use cases, so really with real numbers attached to them, and how marketers are using things. It's not only marketing, of course, it's customer service. The Klarna example. The Klarna put up a Gen AI tool, a virtual financial assistant that handled something like, I think it was 2.3 million calls in the first short period of time. The calls they handled were satisfying as with a human, 25% better in terms of less returns and less things you don't want to have, and 80% less time for customers to get whatever they want to get done. So saved 700 people effectively in terms of call center FTEs, and I think it was $40 million in terms of cost savings. From applying, just by providing a service that makes financial advice more effective for customers. And the Sephora example with their beauty assistant, which is a online omni-channel example, and other ones as well, all show what can be done if you use AI and Gen AI intelligently. But it's early days. We're still trying to work out how to do it. We're still trying to work out how to deal with hallucinations. We're still trying to work out what the guardrails should be that we don't want to cross over. There's been some great cases of mistakes made recently. So Canada with its bereavement flight chatbot should have been a FAQ. Went to court in America, they lost. So a court in Canada, they lost the particular battle. It was only over a small amount of money. I think it was $650 or something, but they still lost and went to court. Their claim was that they weren't responsible for the decision made by the chatbot because it was an independent entity, which the court laughed out of court, of course. And
rightfully so. Yeah.
Another example, I think, was a GM dealer in the USA, where because you can, let's not say trick, but you can work with chatbots, you know how they work, to get it to say things that perhaps the chatbot didn't want to say, or you didn't want it to say as a person designing the chatbot dialogue. Managed to sell I think it was $70,000 or $80,000 Chevy Dive for $1, which Chevy or the dealership was forced to uphold because it was a contract made through their website. And there were other ones I'm not going to talk about as well.
Ralph?
I said I would be available to take that car.
I would buy it and have it imported.
Yeah.
What is chasing me off is, as we come to the shop floor, as we come to the disaster area of where it happens all, such as the sales clerk or the vendor assistant who is in the shop tries to sell me and doesn't have all that bunch of information at his hands, even that he's carrying a smartphone, about me, what my preferences are, and what I really would need. And what I get instead is assisted reading out of a box I could read myself if I'm looking for a new Logitech camera or something like that. But what I would have expected is that he is, because I shop regularly in the same outlets, that he knows me, he knows my profile, and he knows my need.
Yes.
And that could be done with technology. Heck, it's not happening.
I think it is, but it's not happening as much perhaps as you like. If you think back to your individual assistant number, look at Robin Dunbar's work on the so-called Dunbar number, so social networks we have, and the numbers are 100 that he always worked in the past have been 150. So we can have 150 close associates that we understand and know well. Beyond that, it starts to get beyond our ability to remember all these things. If you're a shop assistant and you have regular customers, you can only deal with so many of them before you start to confuse what they want and what they're doing. And of course, you know lots of things they don't know because they haven't told them. With technology, I can expand that size of that number to a much larger, maybe 1,000 people. Because the technology does the things that I can't do. I can't remember what it is. The technology knows that information, providing it's been provided with the information, it can help me to make those choices better by wrapping data into those interactions. If it doesn't happen, that's a function of the design of the systems that the sales staff have to use. And of course, that applies to customers as well. So the Sephora example I put up on my 5 examples today with their beauty assistant. So the virtual assistant provides customers with, based upon their previous purchases and a lot of analysis they carried out beforehand, with information about products that may be relevant or they've already got, information about returns and refund policies, helps to make those sales, get to the point when they actually make those orders. And then the beauty assistant, when you get into the shop, this is Sephora in Singapore from what I remember, closes the last mile, that actual last bit of interaction. When you confirms what's already been done, that's a great opportunity, a great example of how Gen AI in this case can empower customers to make better choices and make life easier for assistants and enable them to make better choices as well when they're dealing with things. The numbers were, from what I remember, something like 9,000 customers used it in the first period of time. They had something like 320,000 conversations about beauty products. And I think it was something like 40,000 incremental dollars of sales per month as a consequence. So a great example of what you can do. You have to learn how to do these things. You can't take Gen AI out of the box, ChatGPT-4 out of the box and start achieving these results. It takes a lot of hard work. You need to think about the problem. You need to break it down. You need to create a suite of prompts, almost certainly architecture. When I started my career in the 1980s, I was an analyst programmer at British Airways. I had to learn programming. And part of that was reading a book by Koenig and Plowger called Elements of Programming Style. It taught you how to architect programs. No different today with ChatGPT, which is a natural programming language effectively. Then I need to experiment and build up the data architecture to go with that. I need to have markdown language to bring in small data or other ways to bring in large amounts of data to be able to train and inform this technology. We're in the early stages still. Even though we produce some amazing results when applied effectively, most companies are still in the early stages. And in fact, I would argue they're probably still in the early stages of personalization, let alone the application of AI in personalization.
Speaking of, go ahead.
No, you.
Okay. Speaking of the results, you very recently published a little article regarding Gen AI case studies, supercharging personalization.
Yes.
That's. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Of course.
Great. I should come up with a better question, shouldn't I?
It is actually a very good question. So there has been if you look at Gartner's digital marketing hype cycle, then we're currently at the peak of inflated expectations, both for Gen AI and prompt engineering. So as we know, there's an enormous amount we can do all these amazing things with Gen AI that I read in the press all the time. And prognostications of billion or trillion dollar results as a consequence that are not going to come about. And the same with those same companies prognosticating billions or trillions of dollars of results from the metaverse and blockchain also didn't come about. We're in early stages of development. So finding economic use cases where you can see what they've done, you can see what the results were, you can see how customers engaged or staff engaged with these things. You can see the results that came out of that economically, so increased sales or increased satisfaction or reduced costs or whatever it may be, is not actually that easy. So I spent a whole day trying to find 5 good cases. There were other ones as well, Shopify, for example, Netflix, etc. I spent a whole day trying to find 5 good cases with hard economic data to support them. A lot of the challenges that companies have, starting with Gen AI, there aren't that many really good pucker use cases for the use of Gen AI in personalization. If you go to McKinsey or BCG, I'm sure they have many from their own private, client work, but they don't leak into the public domain. So organizations are faced with trying to understand, first of all, how LLMs work, because it's not, or Gen AI works more generally, because it's not only LLMs, it's to do with images and moving images as well. But understanding how they work, you need to do that to be able to understand how to get the most out of them. Then identifying really appropriate use cases that are viable with your capabilities and valuable should they work. Looking for those, what BCG calls golden use cases, those use cases that can actually change your competitive capability, of your providing competitive advantage by applying Gen AI, for example. This is a process of trial and error. Then I've got to make experimentation, and then I've got to pilot proof of concept pilots before I go live. We're at early stages still.
So what did you find?
Well, they're within the 5 use cases.
Yeah, what are they? Unless they are private now as well.
They're all public, and of course. So the 5 use cases with the Klarna, we talked about example a little while ago. So the virtual financial assistant, providing a whole range of advice and support for customers trying to make relatively small-scale purchases with the owner of a credit card, typically. That saved 700 FTEs, and I think saved them $40 million as a consequence. There was at the beginning was the Coca-Cola example, where they engaged with creators to use their amazing brand assets and to co-create examples of new uses of those assets to promote Coke. The winners of that particular, I think it was a short period competition. The winners had their creative content displayed in Times Square in New York, Piccadilly Circus in London, and the top 30 were invited to go to their head office in Atlanta to take part in a 3-day internal content, create merchandising, a whole variety of things. So an amazing way for fans to engage with the brand. And there is a great post, I should put it into the link in that describes a particular creative agency and how they went, the step-by-step process they went to and how they engaged together with Coca-Cola to do that. There's the IKEA example of the creative tool whereby you can go and load up the pictures of your rooms in your home, and then the tool will allow you to move the furniture you've got. It creates a realistic image of your rooms, to remove furniture, to put in place IKEA furniture from their catalogue, see what it really look like, and of course to order it and buy it online as well. I think it has something like 1 million different users over a relatively short period of time. There's the example of Sephora we talked about, the virtual beauty assistant. And the other one I think I used was Starbucks, who were through their Deep Brew AI platform that they're using that allowed to do a whole variety of things to provide personalization. The nirvana has always been, we talk about, in the past, it was mass customization. So you can have variations of a theme to create, a segment level type proposition. And we have personalization where we start to go to a final level, but the ultimate is always going to be individualization. So Thomas gets one offer and one concept of content, and Marshall gets something entirely different, depending on you and what you're trying to get done, your job to be done. And the example from Starbucks was they're moving in that direction. Of course, Starbucks and the app is a payment platform as much as it is a personalization platform. So this applies to their personalization as well. So Coca-Cola, IKEA, Starbucks, Sephora, Klarna, and there are others like I mentioned, Shopify, Netflix, and others that are quite well known. All examples of companies that have been experimenting over a period of time with AI and now Gen AI, and finding that they works remarkably well. And of course, the key thing is, it works for customers. If it doesn't work for customers, customer is not going to work for the company either. So they've recognized that helping customers get their jobs and that reinforcement, second R in my 3 R's of personalization, is really key to get into the third R, recommendation to buy something new and better than what you've already got.
That leads me to a thought. So, the thought is therefore longer.
Just one?
Yeah, so there are so many that I struggle putting them into a sequence of words. So
You'd ask Gen AI, it would do it for you.
Yeah, we are talking about consumerization of especially IT, of services, basically. So now in marketing, especially when we are trying to personalize marketing, I do see two trends. One is that the more, let's say, lower scale the transactions are, so when the volume is high, they just tend to blast out stuff that they say is personalized. Whereas with the obvious result, so my spam folder is overflowing. The other thing is, if I'm looking into B2B, where context is becoming more and more relevant because the stakes are far higher for each individual deal.
Yes.
So where businesses are trying to contact me at the moments that matter to me.
Yes.
When they can identify the moment it matters to me, which is, for example, when I'm surfing their site. Yeah, and then they have context about me, and in moment means very relevant as it is very current information about my intents. Shouldn't we use personalization more in that sense, that we are getting addressed as consumers more in moments that matter, as opposed to being defined of being in the market by our mere breathing? Because this is how in my ears you defined marketplace right now. So I'm there, so I'm a valid target, so I can be shot at. So shouldn't we use this technology just that way around, that we are getting addressed only when we show signs of interest?
So timing and frequency.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a two-way street. So
it's a dilemma.
The marketing mix model I described from Kuhn Powers a little while ago, it's made very clear that if you talk to a customer when they're in the market, about when they're in process of using a product or service, for example, they showed interest, that's 44 times more effective than just blasting things out at customers. So, and only a fool would not do that if they had an opportunity to do so. But to do that well, I need the magic word contextual data. Most companies have what I think of as the 4 C's. They have data about customers, about the contracts, what products have you got, about contacts with you, typically in the outbound contacts, and about some information about consumption or usage of a product or service. You don't have information about your intentions, your desires, what job you're trying to do, how you measure success, blah, blah, blah. That's the stuff you really, really need to be really effective at your personalized communications, or your personalized experience, or your personalized service. So the challenge that marketers have is to get this information and know how to use it. But the challenge doesn't end there. So knowing that you're in the marketplace doesn't 70% of success doesn't help you if we don't have the right product or service for you. If you look at let's take an example. Look at most retail banks. Their products haven't evolved much, or there's been nothing magical over maybe the last 50 years or so. Packaged current accounts are probably the most exciting recent innovation in many cases compared to the standard current account. So having a product that's not appropriate, doesn't match my needs, doesn't necessarily mean that means often I'm not going to buy it. Well, I'm going to buy something that's not really good enough, but they're all the same anyway. So I'm left with little choice. That leads to another idea that technology would help us to do as well, which is the idea of composable, not only composable marketing, so be able to mix and match components in a template, which is by business rules, but also composable products. I worked with the telco a couple of years ago, and they had a program of work that was deconstructing their telecoms propositions into individual component parts, then allowing customers and staff to reconstruct them into composable solutions that help me get my jobs done better than the standardized stuff. If you look back 10 years or more to Garanti Bank, in now part of BBVA Group in Turkey, they had a flexi card. Frank Pillar, the professor at RWTH in Aachen, described it in one of his courses that I attended at IE Business School. And in that, he described how the flexi card has something like 19 different components at the time that you could customize, which produced 9,000 legal combinations. So most people take the same things. And you provide the tools to help you to identify, most people take these things, you can change them and adapt and what have you, to make life easy for you. That idea of a composable product, in this case, you could have a picture of your children on the credit card as the image of the credit card, as part of that composable product. Composable product is as much as important in many ways, even if it's only the last 20% of the total value, as being able to identify the context of the customer and that they're in the marketplace to get reinforcement of the product they bought, or a new recommendation for a new product and so forth. That for me is one of the biggest battlegrounds coming along, and of course technology like generative AI will help us to do that more efficiently, more effectively.
Wow.
Done silent.
Yeah,
We're stunned.
We're a long way away from that in many organizations. But we're moving in that direction. If the telco I talked about could start to look at this with their thousands of different products, then other organizations can too. It all, we talked about, with Joe Pine, the co-author of The Experience Economy. Before that, in 1983, he wrote a book called Mass Customization. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I used the book he wrote in '83 when I was working on a project in Europe, and building a collection project to design the treatments that we use to get people to pay their bills. All driven by the same thing, 1983 thing. It's still relevant today. And I think Shinji is right as well. So it's still in the early stages of evolution in terms of how we use it now. We don't have the data necessarily to be able to micro personalize or individualize. But as we develop the data and develop the technologies and we develop the skills, so that's an important point as well. So Eric Brynjolfsson at MIT, Gen AI is a general purpose technology, and he talks about J-shaped curves, building on the work of people like George Soros in the 1970s, who famously said, "I see technology everywhere, except in the productivity statistics." And what we see is that if I want to introduce a new technology, like Gen AI, I need to build a whole raft of complementary capabilities, bits of process, bits of other technologies and their integration, bits of data, roles and responsibilities, collaborative working, work systems, governance, to get the most of the technology. Look at MarTech. Look at the recent Gartner report on MarTech usage. The last figures I saw, 67% of MarTech that's been bought is never, ever used. If you're a medium-sized corporation, spending 10% of your 250 million turnover on marketing, 25% of that on MarTech, 17% of your marketing budget is squandered on tech you never use. Why didn't you use it? Often you bought the wrong stuff in the first place. You bought things as a bundle. You bought bloatware when you only need something very specific. But also, you haven't built out all your complementary capabilities necessary to get all the value of the technology. I've built a service called Value Builder together with Optima Partners that helps you identify for personalization what are your complementary capabilities that you need to be able to get the most out of your MarTech and your personalization. It's a huge problem for companies. They buy stuff and they never use it. And GPT, ChatGPT or Gen AI more generally, has that same problem. Brynjolfsson reckons it will be 5 to 10 years before we understand all the capabilities necessary, get all the value out of a general purpose technology like Gen AI.
Looking at the time, we could continue this for probably a few more days, if not more.
Easy.
Let's get into our famous last words question. getting back to personalization and AI. So having heard and talked about all this, how much personalization is necessary at all? And what would be the contribution of AI to this? How much as a corollary?
So let's let customers answer that question. So I saw an earlier McKinsey study that suggested that 71% of customers want personalized interactions. They want to be recognized. They want reinforcement of the value they've already got from the stuff they bought. They want recommendations that are relevant and appropriate at the right time when they enter the marketplace. So 71% of customers want personalization. Unfortunately, 76% of them are disappointed when they don't get what they want. Why are they disappointed? Because we're still early in the days of developing our personalization capabilities. I work with some big banks and telcos. You think they have this nailed to the floor? No, they don't. It's still learning by doing. It's difficult and complicated. Technologies are hard to use as well. Despite all the billions spent on developing them, they're not always as easy to use as they should be. So you might need an army of other people to help to use them as well. So still early days. Most organizations are still learning how to do personalization. When they've learned how to do personalization, they've learned how to do journey orchestration and then eventually get to conversational marketing, where we start to have real conversations wrapped around interactions in the journey. AI is a tool. It's already helping us through machine learning to do a whole load of decisioning choices. And Gen AI will help us to do a whole load of other things, make our lives easier as marketers, make our lives easier as customers as well. And at the end of the day, the aim is that customers get more of what they want and marketers get more of what they want. We co-create value together using personalization powered by Gen AI or AI more generally.
Well, as the timekeeper, I think it is my job to say, tweet, it's over, and there is no injury time. So that's our convo for today. I learned, as always, a lot from Dr. G. He's one of the most insightful people in the world of business technology that I know. So that was good for us. To our guests in the chat, thank you very much for your lively discussion.
Yes.
And of course, Graham, thank you for your time, your insight, your willingness to put up with us.
As ever, it has been an absolute pleasure. And as you say, we could go on talking about these things for hours and days.
Yeah.
You'll always have a place to do it here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So tune in. So next week, tune in when we dive into what we're calling action-oriented CRM with our guest Michael Fitzgerald of One Page CRM. It'll be interesting to see where we go with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So until then, on behalf of us all, thank you very much. We're going backstage. You can get on with your day. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thank you very much.